it began without warning, as most endings do. In February 2025, in a quiet coastal village in Japan, fishermen woke to an unbelievable sight. Streets that should have been silent and empty were alive with movement, thousands of fish flopping helplessly on the asphalt, gasping for air. But these weren't the fish they'd spent their lives catching. These were deep-sea creatures. Species that belonged in total darkness, kilometers beneath the surface, suddenly lying exposed beneath the pale morning sun. Their scales shimmered with colors unseen before. Eyes as black as oil stared wide with terror. Bodies that should have imploded from the pressure of the surface world twitched in unnatural rhythms. No one knew how to explain it. The village elders, who knew the sea better than anyone, whispered nervously among themselves. Fish don't leave the water unless they have no other choice. And these fish were running from something. At first, the world dismissed it. A freak event. Maybe a shift in ocean currents or some undersea landslide displacing the deep. But within days, the reports started spreading. This wasn't an isolated phenomenon. It was global. In Chile, monstrous squid, the size of small cars, washed ashore in the bright daylight, their tentacles limp and unresponsive. In Iceland, ancient sharks, older than the pyramids, beached themselves in the dozens, seemingly in blind panic. And in South Africa, entire reefs went silent overnight. Vibrant ecosystems that had thrived for thousands of years were suddenly empty. Gone. As if the ocean itself was being evacuated. Marine biologists, climate scientists, and government officials raced to find answers. Climate change was the first theory. But it didn't make sense. No temperature shift could cause such chaos in mere days. Sonar testing? Seismic disturbances? Polluted waters? Nothing added up. There was no logical explanation for why the ocean's most elusive creatures were throwing themselves onto land, as if the land might somehow save them from what was coming. And then came the hum. March 3rd. The first underwater microphones in the Pacific picked up a strange, low-frequency vibration. It was subtle at first, like a distant engine rumbling somewhere in the abyss. But within hours, it grew. Rhythmic. Pulsing. Almost like breathing. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't natural. And it wasn't stopping. Within days, entire shipping lanes shut down. Crews reported structural damage from vibrations alone. Windows shattered without warning. Radio signals distorted. The hum was everywhere now, felt more than heard, vibrating through the bones of anyone near the water. Whales breached and refused to dive again, seemingly desperate to stay on the surface. Dolphins crashed into rocky cliffs, bleeding and broken. The great exodus from the sea had begun. In desperation, a research team dispatched a probe into the Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth. The live feed lasted 6 minutes. What the probe captured in those final moments has never been officially released. But as always, secrets don't stay hidden for long. Grainy leaked footage circulated online, showing movement in the dark. Not the movement of currents or fish, but of something alive. Something enormous. The video showed scales the size of small houses. Glowing eyes far below, watching, waiting. Something ancient uncoiling itself from the ocean floor, rising slowly, deliberately, as if it had waited long enough and decided now was the time. Then the feed cut to static. The crew aboard the research vessel that deployed the probe reported hearing the hum grow louder, rattling the hull until they fled back to port, terrified to even describe what they'd seen. And then the whirlpools came. March 10th. 3 massive whirlpools formed across the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans. Perfect spirals, each hundreds of kilometers wide. From space, they looked like dark, endless voids, pulling the sea itself downward into something unseen. Ships that approached them vanished without a trace. Drones sent in after them lost contact. The water levels around the whirlpools dropped. The oceans themselves seemed to be draining. But where? And into what? By now, panic was setting in worldwide. Emergency broadcasts warned of unusual marine activity. Military forces were put on high alert. People living near coastlines fled inland. But none of it mattered. Whatever was happening wasn't confined to the sea anymore. March 18th. The fish began to walk. It started in Indonesia. Witnesses described eels dragging themselves over highways. Octopuses slithered into parking lots, wrapping their tentacles around lamp posts as if searching for shelter. Crabs by the thousands climbed walls and skittered over rooftops. And they weren't acting like dying animals out of place. They were moving with purpose, as if obeying orders only they could hear. They were fleeing the sea, abandoning the water entirely, heading inland with as much urgency as their bodies could manage. The skies changed next. Auroras shimmered in the skies over the equator, pulsing green and violet waves where they should never exist. Thunderstorms spun into perfect spirals, mirroring the whirlpools below. Stars in the night sky flickered and vanished as though some great hand was blotting them out one by one. This was no natural disaster. This wasn't climate change or tectonic shifts. This was something else. Something we were never meant to witness. Religious leaders declared the end times. Scientists spoke in hushed tones about dimensional rifts, of ancient forces rising from beneath the Earth's crust. Theories ran wild, but none could change what was coming. By the end of March, world governments united in secret meetings. Navies deployed in force. Barricades were set at sea. Nuclear weapons were primed and aimed into the dark, targeted at the heart of the whirlpools. On March 28, humanity fired its best shot. Missiles streaked through the sky. Submarines launched warheads. The explosions bloomed over the water and then, nothing. The weapons struck empty water. The hum grew louder. So loud it cracked the foundations of cities. Buildings swayed like reeds in the wind. People covered their ears and collapsed in the streets, blood dripping from their noses. April 1st. The first one surfaced. Off the coast of New Zealand, a shadow rose from the deep. It was larger than the tallest mountains, its body a moving island of black stone and shimmering scales. Its eyes glowed blue like frozen suns. It didn't scream or roar. It simply stared toward the horizon, as if deciding where to begin. For hours, it remained motionless, the water calm around it as if the ocean itself were holding its breath. And then, the silence. Phones, televisions, radios, every device across the globe switched on by themselves. No signal. No network. Just a voice. Ancient. Calm. Inevitable. We have returned. The earth was never yours. The sea began to rise. Not in waves, but walls. Towering curtains of water hundreds of meters high. Slow. Relentless. The kind of flood you couldn't outrun, couldn't survive, couldn't even comprehend. Cities fell beneath the rising tide. Continents were swallowed whole. And just like that, mankind's reign ended. No war. No fire. Just the patient, unstoppable return of the deep. And all along, the fish had tried to warn us.